Okay, so this is the photon stove, Don Johnston's photon stove, and this is my kitchen, my cook set. So let's just talk about some basics, like how much this guy weighs. Stove itself, okay, we zeroed the scale. Stove itself is less than an ounce. Stove with the stand, that's a little heavier. That's 2 ounces. Stove with a penny. This it's one of those post 1980 whatever pennies. It's got a zinc core instead of full copper. That's nominal. We put this in a stove pot. Okay, this is a 3/4 liter MSR titanium stove. I mean, there's other pots that are similar. I think there's an Everlight, but it's got a broader base. I'd be thinking about something like that if I was starting out with gear again, but this works just fine. Pot scrubber, this is half a Scotch-Brite pad. There's a pot holder, this is an old piece of felt. What else do we have? This is, oh, what do you call this stuff? Handy wipe, maybe? It's just a nice thing to be able to wipe and clean up your equipment with. This is a 1 ounce measuring cup. They come off of like cough syrup bottles. You can use a teaspoon. I used teaspoons for a while, but I found this thing much better. Book of matches. I got a folding spoon, just a plastic folding spoon. And the only reason I use a folding spoon is because it fits right inside here. I do use one pocket knife. That's kind of multi-use. I keep that someplace else. And a lid. So this thing weighs, I don't know, 7 ounces. And then add a windscreen. This is made of an old turkey roasting pan. It's got holes cut in the bottom because this thing requires a lot of air movement to keep it moving. So let's see, put that on. And total stove setup without fuel is 9 ounces, and then we add this cozy, which is made of some old NATO Army surplus pants. It's a little heavier than it should be. I mean, I think there's a way you can work with foil, but it's got romantic attachments. So that brings us to 11 ounces. It seems a tiny bit heavy, but it's 11 ounces. That's my entire kitchen. Without the fuel and the pocket knife. So this is the fuel, ETOH. This is ethyl alcohol, and you can burn just about anything in this thing. I mean, you can. Well, no. Stay away from gasoline, diesel, propane. Okay, but you can burn ethyl alcohol. You can burn methyl alcohol. You can burn isopropyl alcohol. And what that means in order is, I like this. It's denatured alcohol. You get it in a hardware store. Comes in a 1 liter, 1 quart thing, which is kind of too big because I only carry a pint. Dry gas. Make sure you burn the red stuff. Isopropyl alcohol. In the pharmacy, get the 90%. The stuff you get over the counter, the 70%. Is too much water in it. Inefficient, and it's smoky, and nobody wants to carry water. So this is ambient soil temperature water, which in Maine I think is 49, 52 degrees. It's pretty much the same as I think just about any water that you would find in the wild. I fill it right up to this thing here, so I'm assuming that's 3/4 of a liter. I have no idea. That's just what I use. So the first thing we do is what I found with this one, and every day is different, every stove's different, it just seems different every time. So I use 1.5 ounces, and 1 ounce is not enough to boil this thing. 2 ounces is too much, and since this stuff is lighter than water, an extra 1/4 ounce burned off doesn't seem problematic. Okay, this is kind of, so you pour it right in that central hole there. That's what that thing's for. Okay, so there's 1 ounce. I'll put another 1/2 ounce in just because, nothing's worse, because if it doesn't boil, then you got to start back over, and this penny does get hot. I mean, this cools down quickly, but the penny gets hot. There's the 1/2 ounce, and you want to save some extra to pour in the base of this thing. And the reason for that is, okay, hang on, set that down. Okay, put a penny on it to seal that central hole. The reason you pour the stuff around the base is because this alcohol in this soda can stove has to be boiling. It's gasified, and then it presents itself as a gas through these pinhole jets. Okay. Nice thing about this stove too is it's really quiet. Okay, then we put our water on top, and see, you can see that it's burning around. Whoops, that's not quite level, is it? I'm not sure that's mission critical, but level it up. It's not very hot, directly hot. I mean, you're not going to burn yourself. See down at the base how it's flaming up around. That'll die down, and this will settle right into it'll settle right into what looks like a gas range. It's really sensitive to wind. This thing does not like wind. So the windscreen, I think I said, made out of an old turkey pan. Really increases the efficiency. Also, when you carry a windscreen, I always found it's easier to roll it around the fuel canister, then fold it, because you get those crease marks, and once you get crease marks, then you've got weak spots, and weak spots do, eventually they wear and tear and things. And yeah, so that's settled down. That's how it burns. Like I said, it's really sensitive to wind. It can be kind of fussy. Although the base is pretty solid, it's only 4 inches, and since you've got a vertical, about 4, since you've got this vertical thing standing on it, the whole thing about being level is pretty important. You don't want your stove sliding off with boiling water everywhere. It's just not fun. So this thing's going to take 3 minutes, maybe 4 minutes to boil. So what you can do is fast forward through this video. I should have put a timer on, but I didn't. But you can fast forward through this video. You can do an add and subtract of the timestamp on the status bar to find out exactly how long it takes to boil. And then I'll show you how I set this thing up for cooking. Well, I can tell you now, actually. So all this does is boil water. So if you're making coffee and you want to make a full, 3/4 of a liter, that's almost 4 cups, 3.5 8-ounce cups, which really translates into 2 cups, right? No, it's 3. Okay, forget the math. It's really nice to put like 4 or 5 instant coffee teaspoons in this thing in the morning to get your jazz going. If you like coffee. If you're cooking, we take this thing off, and I don't use the pot holders to take it off. I use the cozy, and then it sits on the pot holder, okay, to insulate the bottom. And then we mix our noodles, or it's almost always pasta, right? Or it's some kind of what do you call that? Pre-cooked rice, Uncle Ben's, or basically whatever trail calories you can find to get in here. And then I cut cheese and sausage just because I like fat and protein. And then, you know, stir it up nicely, sit it on here, place the cozy on top, and then wait. You know, in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, however long. It's how you like your pasta. Do you like your pasta al dente? Do you like your pasta soft? But since the trick of cooking with this relies on the capacity of the pot to retain heat, you don't want to be checking it too often. So, I mean, since there's an exponential decrease, the cooling curve is an exponential decrease, that most of the cooling is going to take place in the first 3 or 4 minutes anyway, and then it's marginal. Marginal advances in cooling, or marginal decreases in temperature the further out in time you get. So I'm just going to be quiet till this thing boils. Oh yeah, one other thing I forgot to mention, right? One of the beauties of this setup is everything fits when you pack it. Everything fits inside this cozy. So this is the size of the thing you have to carry. You're not sprawling around. It's small, it's compact, it's light, and just throw this in a stuff sack that cooking can get messy. Okay, even though unless you're burning really low grade stuff, you don't get soot with an alcohol stove. You know, cooking can get messy, so a stuff sack is not going to that you don't mind getting dirty. Black is one of the favorite colors, of course. Hear it? Oh, I also forgot the advantage of this one is obviously cost. You know, JB Weld, which is an epoxy high temperature epoxy, 2-part epoxy. The hardware cloth for the stand, that's you may or may not have that hanging around. Everybody must have a scrap someplace, or go to the hardware store and just say, hey, I only want to buy 6 inches of a strip of hardware cloth, and that'll be enough to build a half a dozen stoves, a couple stoves anyway. The 4-inch tuna can, you drink the tuna, and recycling costs for a can in Maine is a nickel. Pick them up, pick a couple up by the roadside. Okay, so this is boiling, and I'm just going to take this stand out of here because the cooking's done. And like I said, it's really hard to actually estimate the the amount of fuel until you've been doing it steady for a while, and I haven't. You know, I mean, you fine-tune that in the field. Okay. So we take. Well, let's turn it this way. Okay, so you can see what's going on. Okay, pot holder. Is that in the field of view? Yeah, pot holder. Remove from heat. Place on pot holder. Okay. Open this little guy. Okay, it can be hot. Find something else to grab it with. Okay, add coffee, add noodles, add cheese and salami, put your granola in if you like a hot breakfast or oatmeal or whatever. All this thing does is boil water. People talk to you about simmer rings and all that stuff, you know. I don't know, I think you're chasing a ghost. All this is basically a steady state heat source. Put the lid on, lower the tab, close this thing up, put the cozy on. Okay, come back in 5 minutes or whatever, and voila, you've got a meal. And since you've got one pot, you eat right out of the pot. Watch the pot. Life is good. And that, my friend, is the, I don't know what you want to call it. It's the Don Johnston Photon Stove. It's a basic soda can stove. There's numerous designs online. I recommend it for someone who who wants to shave some weight, okay, and you know, doesn't, you know, or someone on a real budget, because this thing is like I said, it costs a couple bucks to make, and while you're making one, you might as well make 4 or 5 for your friends. Sayonara.